Thank you, Krista, for such a warm welcome, and welcome also for me to this wonderful evening. I'm really excited about sitting here with Sarah Ladipo Manyika, whose work I admire really a lot, and whose novel Like a Moo Bringing Ice Cream to the Sun has just come out in German, wie ein Maultier, das der Sonne Eis bringt. And I urge you all to get it so you can get it signed. It's obviously that's a special thing. But let's jump in because we don't have a lot of time, and I want to make sure we can talk about a lot of things here, a lot of readings, but also give you the chance to ask questions. So think about if there's things coming up that you might want to ask. I'm going to start just introducing Sarah a little formally, because I think it's always good to know some of the achievements, obviously not everything. Sarah is a writer, academic, and overall lover of stories. She was raised in Nigeria and has lived in Kenya, France, Zimbabwe, and England. Her best-selling debut novel, Independence, was required reading in a number of high schools and universities around the world, while her second novel, Like a Moo Bringing Ice Cream to the Sun, was shortlisted for the UK's Goldsmiths Prize and the California Book Award. Her nonfiction includes personal essays and intimate profiles of people she meets, from Mrs. Harris to Toni Morrison and Michelle Obama. Sarah was founding books editor of Ozzy Books and a long-time lecturer at San Francisco State University, and she currently serves as board director for the Women's Writers Residency, Hedgebrook. Quite something. I know. To begin, I wanted to read just a very brief overview of the novel and a really lovely quote from another fellow writer about it, which I thought was really a great way to set this off and some of the questions that I have. But for those of you who haven't read the novel, Like a Moo Bringing Ice Cream to the Sun is a mesmerizing meditation on aging, friendship, and loss. It is a humorous, subtle, and engaging novel featuring a fantastically feisty and memorable protagonist, Dr. Morayo da Silva. On the cusp of 75, Morayo defiantly dances on the edge of old age until she has a fall and her independence crumbles. This is a novel about everyday chance encounters, about lovers in literature, diplomats and shopkeepers, carers and companions. It is both an ode to San Francisco and a glimpse into the ever-changing Nigeria of Dr. Morayo's youth. And the wonderful quote that I picked out, there were quite a few good ones, but I'll keep one for today. It's by Brian Chikwawa, from the author of Harare North. And he said, "It is a wonderfully constructed novel, always surprising and wrong-footing the reader at every turn, and challenging one's assumptions about the other. Like a Moo Bringing Ice Cream to the Sun is a delightful, multi-helical reading experience that speaks to our times in insightful and pleasantly understated ways." And I really couldn't agree more. There's a seemingly very light touch of how the novel dances around and twists and turns, but it has a lot of depth and breadth, and we were going to speak about all of that and hopefully find out how you achieved that. But I wanted to, of course, start with Sarah giving a reading from the novel, and then Dela giving us the German translation.
Is that okay? First of all, Dankeschön. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to Krista and her team and everyone who has sponsored this and been a part of this. It's a real honor for me to be with Olumide, whose work I greatly admire, and she's going to stop me talking about her work, but her books are there too, so please get them. And to have the opportunity to meet Della, I'm so excited. This is very exciting for me. So I'll start off by reading a little bit from the novel in English. And the main character, just to set it up for people who don't know anything about it, the main character is a woman named Morayo da Silva. Morayo in Yoruba means I see joy. And she is an expatriate Nigerian woman living in San Francisco. And this is a story of her life. It's a story of friendships, aging, and desire. And one of the things that she likes to do is she likes to go on walks around her neighborhood, and she has various neighborhood friends. So the first passage that I'll read is from her, And basically, she's going on a walk and she's going to bump into a character. So, Morayo is quite tall and she's very stylish. Okay. She also wears glasses, and I had these so I could wear them, but I can't actually see out of them. So you have to use your imagination. I resume my walk down Stanyan Street, puzzling for a moment over Daoud's words. His jovial exterior doesn't fool me because I know he's led a hard life. He's been divorced, he suffers from back pain, and Amira has told me that it was political trouble that caused their mother to send him out of Ramallah. I imagine him as an angry teenager, throwing stones at Israeli soldiers, but nothing more serious, for how else would they have given him refuge in America? "You look awesome," says a stranger, startling me from my thoughts. "Well, so do you," I smile, noticing the man's carefully manicured lime green fingernails. I enjoy this sort of attention from San Francisco's gentlemen. It's one of the things that I love about the city. And because of men like this, men not sexually attracted to women, I find this city gentler than most. And what's more, here in San Francisco, both men and women seem to admire my sense of style. Whereas if I were back in London or certain parts of New York, where buba and gele are commonplace, I know that I wouldn't turn heads, not at this age at least. And back in Nigeria, where so many are dressed like me, I wouldn't draw any attention at all. So I treasure the city with its bright morning sun and brilliant blue skies. I love the way the fog rolls in late in the day, tumbling over Sutro Forest to cloak my part of the city in soft white mist. But it's the people of San Francisco, so often quirky, but always friendly, that makes it feel like home to me. I must have walked several blocks before noticing the homeless man in front of me. Seeing how dejectedly he moves, it makes me feel selfish for having worried so much about the DMV. I drop back a step and watch as the man's dog follows, the leash trailing behind. I'm reminded of a summer in Lagos when an American preacher came to Nigeria and walked around carrying a cross on his back. It was the year that Caesar, my ex-husband, was in between his Delhi and Paris tours, and just a few years into our marriage, when I discovered that Caesar had another wife. I was in such shock that I considered leaving Caesar that very day, picking up my own cross and following the preacher. I stare now at the back of the man's legs, muddied and clad in the remnants of blue jeans. On the man's backpack is a tangle of straps and tags flapping angrily in the wind, and when the puppy stops to squat, I pass discreetly in front of both of them, keeping my distance, in case of lice or some sudden outburst. I expect him to smell badly, but he doesn't. And glancing back, I see that he's actually a she, and shockingly young to be carrying such a load, 17 or 18, judging from the slenderness of the girl's arms. Except that when I stop to look again and I glimpse those steely tiger blue eyes, I'm no longer sure. She could be in her 30s, maybe her 40s. I watch as the woman stops. She reaches into a nearby trash can, she whips out some newspaper and tears off a sheet before returning to where the puppy has just been. She scoops up the steaming black pellets, then chucks them in the trash. Come on, stupid, she mutters to the dog. Are you okay, my love?
Thank you. Wonderful.
Ich gehe weiter die Stanyan Street entlang und denke kurz über Davuds Worte nach. Seine joviale Art kann mich nicht täuschen. Ich weiß, er hat es im Leben nicht leicht gehabt. Seine Frau hat sich scheiden lassen, er hat Rückenprobleme und von Amira weiß ich, dass es etwas Politisches war, weswegen die Mutter ihn aus Ramallah weggeschickt hatte. Ich stelle ihn mir als wütenden Teenager vor, der Steine auf israelische Soldaten wirft. Aber nichts Ernsteres als das. Denn wie hätte er sonst in Amerika Asyl bekommen sollen? Ihr Outfit ist ein Traum, sagt ein Wildfremder und reißt mich aus meinen Gedanken. Oh, danke, ebenfalls, sage ich lächelnd und nehme die sorgsam manikürten und lindgrün lackierten Fingernägel des Mannes zur Kenntnis. Ich genieße diese Art von Aufmerksamkeit von den Herren aus San Francisco. Es gehört zu den Dingen, die ich an dieser Stadt liebe. Und wegen dieser Männer, die sich sexuell nicht zu Frauen hingezogen fühlen, kommt mir diese Stadt sanftmütiger vor als die meisten anderen. Hinzu kommt, dass hier in San Francisco sowohl Männer als auch Frauen mein Stil zu bewundern scheinen. Wäre ich wieder in London oder in bestimmten Ecken von New York, wo man häufig Frauen in Buba und Gelee sieht, würde sich kein Mensch nach mir umdrehen, zumindest nicht in meinem Alter. Und in Nigeria, wo so viele sich kleiden wie ich, würde ich auch keine Blicke auf mich ziehen. Insofern schätze ich diese Stadt mit ihrer leuchtenden Morgensonne und dem herrlich blauen Himmel. Ich liebe es, wie nachmittags der Nebel aufkommt und über den Sutu Forest zieht, um einen Stadtteil in sanften weißen Dunst zu hüllen. Aber vor allem sind es die Menschen in San Francisco, häufig etwas schräg, aber immer freundlich, die mir das Gefühl geben, hier zu Hause zu sein. Ich muss mehrere Blocks gelaufen sein, bevor ich den obdachlosen Mann vor mir bemerke. Beim Anblick seiner deprimierten Haltung komme ich mir egoistisch vor, dass ich mir so viele Gedanken um das Kraftfahrzeugamt gemacht habe. Ich falle einen Schritt zurück und beobachte den Hund des Mannes, der mit schleifender Leine hinter ihm hertrottet. Ich muss an einen Sommer in Lagos denken, als ein amerikanischer Priester mit einem Kreuz auf dem Rücken durch die Gegend lief. Ich hatte gerade herausgefunden, dass Cäsar eine zweite Frau hatte. Ich war so getroffen, dass ich mit dem Gedanken spielte, ihn noch am selben Tag zu verlassen, mein eigenes Kreuz auf mich zu laden und dem Prediger zu folgen. Jetzt starre ich von hinten auf die Beine des Mannes in seinen verdreckten und zerfetzten Jeans. An seinem Rucksack hängt ein Wirrwarr aus Riemen und Anhängern, die wütend im Wind flattern. Und als der junge Hund stehen bleibt und sich hinhockt, überhole ich die beiden diskret und mit gebührendem Abstand, falls der Mann Läuse hat oder plötzlich losschimpft. Ich rechne damit, dass er stinkt, was aber nicht der Fall ist. Und beim Blick über die Schulter sehe ich, dass er eine Sie ist und viel zu jung, um so schwer zu schleppen. 17 oder 18, den schlanken Arm des Mädchens nach zu urteilen. Nur, dass ich unsicher werde, als ich erneut innehalte und hinsehe und die stählernen blauen Augen eines Tigers erblicke. Sie könnte auch in ihren 30ern sein, vielleicht sogar in den 40ern. Ich beobachte, wie die Frau vor einem nahegelegenen Mülleimer stehen bleibt, rasch ein Stück Zeitung herauszieht und ein Blatt abreißt, um an die Stelle zurückzugehen, wo der junge Hund sich gerade erleichtert hat. Sie nimmt die dampfenden schwarzen Kügelchen auf und wirft sie in den Mülleimer. »Na komm, Blödmann«, murmelt sie dem Hund zu. »Alles okay, Liebes?« frage ich.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I think I have to change, and we're just going to do readings because this is wonderful. Two really beautiful renditions of really interesting characters. So both of you are amazing, and it really brought Morayo alive, I think. So Sarah, can you tell us a little bit how Morayo became a character? Did she model her on someone, or were there ideas that you wanted to sort of fit into a character? What's the genesis?
Well, I always say that, my fiction is driven by stories that I want to read and I cannot find. So, and I'm always quoting Toni Morrison, who said, if there are stories you want to read and you cannot find, what do? You write them. And so with this particular book, I was longing to read about older women. So I had come into my middle age and looking ahead if I make it that far. And I wanted to see lives reflected that I was seeing. I was seeing in real life amazing women around the world, like doing fabulous things, sensual women, non-conventional women. And I just wasn't finding that in literature. I was finding that in real life, but not in literature. I was finding lots of stories about older men, but not older women, and certainly not older African women. So that was the genesis. And, this character is probably an amalgam of many people that I have met. It's probably a projection to some extent of what I would like to have her joie de vivre. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And I, because I'm going to come back to that in different ways, this idea of around the world. You just said it was inspired by women you've seen around the world. And I think Mariah's she's lived in many different places. So I was wondering about the sense of home, where she's most of home, what home is to her, and also at this particular time in her life, because she's about to turn 75. So there is maybe a sense of getting to the end part of life, not the end, but the latter part. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think certainly she's at home with her books. You definitely, I think, get that sense that literature provides a sense of home. And she's at home with the various neighborhood friends as well. She's also lonely, though. And I think one of the things that I was exploring was loneliness manifested in different ways, and loneliness even in the midst of lots of people. Sometimes you can be the most lonely when you're around lots of people. And then back to the question of home. I don't remember who it was, but someone said old age is another country, or something like that. Old age is like another country. So I think that was also, what I was exploring, that this is a character who grew up in Nigeria, and she's lived in different places. And so San Francisco is a home to some extent, but not fully a home. There's almost no place that's fully a home geographically. But as she enters older age, this is also foreign terrain for her, as it will be for all of us if and when we get there.
Because there's that threat that she's going to lose her independence, and she's sort of fiercely independent and likes to do her own thing, if you will. We're going to come back to this idea of the books, or this notion that she's really a book lover. She's in conversation with books and literature and characters. And of course, a lot of books have that sort of intertextuality. But with her, I was very struck how you weave the story and things that triggered as if they're real memories from her own life. So something will happen and all of a sudden a character is really there. Or one other thing she does is she places books on the bookshelf to have conversation with each other. So there's an example of Wild Sagasso Sea, which is above Jane Eyre, because it is sort of the more feminist, anti-colonialist version of it. And there's a lovely commentary, but also this idea of that she, as you said, she's most at home with her books, and she's most in conversation with them, although she is so alive. Do you think her life would be different if she was in Nigeria at this particular time in her life? Because age in the West and in Nigeria can be very different.
I think I'll leave that ultimate answer to the reader. But I think, as I mentioned before, that she's never fully at home anywhere. And of course, the Nigeria that she knew, that she grew up in, has changed. And so Yeah, and I think she also recognizes that. She will look back at times past and be quite nostalgic. Yeah. But this business, I just want to go back to what you were saying about, you know, intertextuality and books speaking to each other. So that is one thing that I share in common with my character. I don't like to drive. There are a whole bunch of other things I don't like that she loves.
She has a Porsche.
She has a Porsche. I don't drive a Porsche.
You don't have a Porsche?
I drive a Lamborghini. And it's red. That's fake news, by the way, before anyone tweets that. Okay.
Tweet it. Yeah. It's not anymore.
But I get really excited at conferences like this because I meet new authors, I hear new voices. You know, this business of crossing borders is so exciting for me, and you do that through literature. So I'm just going to riff a little bit and say one of the books that I'm reading at the moment, and I'm reading it via audio, is a book called Milkman by Anna Burns, and she won the Booker Prize 2 years ago, maybe, I think?
No, last year.
Okay, last year. It's a book that I just felt I wanted to hear it read, and of course
she reading it, or?
She isn't reading, but someone else is reading it,
Irish.
and she has this lovely Irish accent, and you know the sounds of. Okay, let me not try and mash up the Irish accent, but it's an amazing coming of age story, and coming of age in it doesn't actually name Ireland, but in a situation where you have very polarized, societies are polarized. It's a young woman dealing with harassment and abuse, and as I'm reading this book, I'm just thinking, I would love to have this book speak to and with Women at Point Zero, Nawal El-Sadawi. I'd love to have it with El Nathan Johns, Born on a Tuesday. I'd love to have it when we speak of nothing. And it's just someone at the first night of the conference said that when it comes to African literature, diasporic literature, there's nothing necessarily new. It's not, sorry, they didn't say that. They said it's not better or worse than any other literature, but there's so much that's new. And so this is so exciting to bring all of that and to really enter into conversations with each other, but also globally with canonical texts, with new texts. You have to cut me off.
And I am now. That's why I took the books, because it's like a talking stick. So no, because I was going to say that, and I love that idea, and it's brilliant how you do that in the novel. So which books would be in conversation with this? So if there was a Morayo picking up this book in her flat, wherever she is, where would she place it? And we know it's good work, so it doesn't need to be enhanced like Jane Eyre's. So what do you think, or which characters would want to be in conversation with Morayo, maybe?
Well, again, I'll leave that to people, but but I will say Toni Morrison. For me, maybe it's less books and it's more characters.
Yeah.
So there's this really strong character, Pilate, in Song of Solomon. And I had the amazing opportunity to meet with Toni Morrison and meet her in her home and speak to her and interview her with Mario Kaiser, who's from Germany. So if you want to read that interview, it's in German. And Toni said we should call her Toni, so I'll call her Toni. Toni said that Pilate was a character that she just wanted to talk and she wouldn't shut up, is what Toni said about her. And so I think Mariah would love her Pilate. But then I will also just say, for me, one of the things when people ask me about inspiration for my work, I'm inspired by other texts, but I'm also inspired by other art forms. So film and music. And again, when we had music the other night. So Hugh Masekela has the song Marketplace. And so the character in that song would sit or sing with Mariah, and I could go on.
Very nice, thank you. Maybe we'll have a second reading before I grill you a bit more. So, do you want to just read and then I can summarize? But because I think we'll find out
So the second reading is from a character called Sage. So the main character in this book is Morayo, but then you see the various people she encounters and various friends. So Sage is, she's not sophisticated. That's not her thing. She has her own kind of sophistication, and she's white American. And so she is the character that we just encountered as Mariah was walking. Sage lives on the street in her car. All right. So the other day, this black lady comes up to me, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying she was black, I'm white, she's black, and tall and old. Not old, but definitely older than me. Old enough to be my mom, maybe even my grandma. So anyway, she sees I'm carrying all this shit. Plus I had my dog. So I guess she kind of felt sorry for me. And then she kind of like asked me if I was okay. But sometimes you get tired of people looking at you like you need pity and shit like that. Yeah, I'm homeless, but so what? Maybe that's what I should have said. But the words don't always come out when you want them to. Homeless is just because we're house challenged. We don't have a roof over our heads, but we make it work. And thank God I'm in the food industry and we have food. And I feel like I've learned a lot from living like this, because you never starve, you're always clothed, you ground score everything. I mean, basically, we help each other, you know? I go to people's parks a lot, and I see a lot of it there. No one's better or different than any other person. We're all of one heart. We all care for each other. We have our off days and our on days, just like everybody else does. And I don't drink or anything like that. And I don't do drugs or anything like that anymore. And that's my choice. It's a perspective and a focus that I have to respect myself. And living like this, you can't live like this if you're high all the time. You can't. Or you just lose focus and you'd be tired all the time. I have my car and my dog and my stuff, and I have a job, so I'm okay. And I've been married, I lived in Portland, lived in Oakland and Berkeley, and had a really good childhood and stuff. My father made a lot of money back then, living in the Bronx. What people make today, my father made back then. Those kind of figures, you know? So I come from good stock. My dad was a saver. Well, I'm not. You know, I'm a free spirit, an artist. And I come from a family of artists and piano playing and music and stuff like that. We had a piano growing up in our house, in my grandmother's house when I was a kid. Ukuleles and mandolins and singing and dancing. You know, that's where I come from, that kind of background. So that's how come the Grateful Dead really gave me that free spirit of danceability. And I took modern dance, and I had a recital at Carnegie Hall. I'm not saying that I'm a poor little rich girl or anything, but I come from good stock. And sure, I have a higher sight for myself, of course. But then I would just want to take everybody into my house, you know, and let them have a good night's sleep, you know? Because I know what it's like. And I haven't slept in a bed for 3 years, you know? But that's a journey in life. And it's like a journalist going to another country, you know? Like on a mission, like a missionary. It's not that I don't sleep. I have a pillow and a comforter, you know, a down comforter. I had a sleeping bag, gave that away. It's so good to give. Giving. I've learned so much about giving. Giving is such a good feeling. You know, buying someone a cup of coffee, or paying someone's toll, or someone doing that for me, you know. That act of kindness is amazing. Amazing. Be kind. It's very amazing. Sometimes we just don't take the time to know people as people. And maybe someone's heart is broken in some way or another, you know? So just to backpedal to that woman, that black woman I was telling you about earlier, maybe her heart was broken, you know? And I shouldn't have been so like, I don't want to talk to you. You just never know. Be kind. Be kind.
The German sister? Be kind. Pass auf. Also neulich kommt eine schwarze Frau zu mir an. Ist nicht negativ gemeint. Ich sag halt nur, sie war schwarz und groß und alt. Also nicht total alt, aber definitiv älter als ich. Alt genug, um meine Mutter zu sein. Ja, vielleicht sogar meine Großmutter. Naja, jedenfalls, sie sieht, dass ich den ganzen Scheiß mit ihr rumschleppe. Und außerdem hatte ich den Hund dabei. Also habe ich ihr vielleicht irgendwie leid getan. Und dann fragt sie mich so, alles in Ordnung? Aber manchmal hat man einfach keinen Bock mehr, ständig angeglotzt zu werden, als bräuchte man Mitleid. Genau, ich lebe auf der Straße. Na und? Vielleicht hätte ich ihr das sagen sollen, aber die richtigen Worte fallen einem ja oft erst später ein. Auf der Straße leben heißt, wir machen unser Ding, auch ohne Wohnung. Wir haben kein Dach über dem Kopf, aber wir kommen klar. Gott sei Dank arbeite ich in der Lebensmittelbranche und wir haben zu essen. Und ich habe das Gefühl, ich habe durch diese Art zu leben sehr viel gelernt. Weil man nie hungert, weil man immer was zum Anziehen hat, weil man im Prinzip alles auf der Straße findet. Wir helfen uns gegenseitig, verstehst du? Ich bin viel in den Parks unterwegs und da sehe ich das immer. Keiner ist besser oder anders als der andere. Wir gehören alle zusammen. Wir kümmern uns umeinander. Wir haben Tage, da geht's uns gut und Tage, da geht's uns mies, genau wie der andere. Ich saufe nicht oder sowas. Ich nehme auch keine Drogen mehr wie früher. Also das ist meine freie Entscheidung. Das ist für mich eine Perspektive. Da konzentriere ich mich drauf. Sonst verliere ich meine Selbstachtung. Und bei so einem Leben kann man nicht die ganze Zeit drauf sein. Geht einfach nicht. Man verliert die Sache aus dem Blick. Man ist die ganze Zeit fertig. Ich habe mein Auto, meinen Hund und mein Zeug. Ich habe einen Job, also geht's mir gut. Ich war sogar schon mal verheiratet. Ich habe in Portland gelebt, in Oakland und in Berkeley. Und ich hatte eine echt schöne Kindheit und so. Also mein Vater hat richtig Kohle gemacht dafür, dass wir in der Bronx gewohnt haben. Das, was die Leute heute so verdienen, hat mein Vater damals verdient. Fette Summen. Also komme ich aus gutem Hause. Mein Vater hat immer alles gespart, anders als ich. Ich bin ein Freigeist, verstehst du, eine Künstlerin. Ich komme aus einer Künstlerfamilie. Mit Klavier und Musik, das volle Programm. Wir hatten schon als Kinder ein Klavier und bei meiner Oma zu Hause war auch schon eins, als ich noch klein war. Ukulele und Mandoline und Singen und Tanzen, verstehst du, aus so einem Elternhaus komme ich. So war das bei uns. Deswegen, die Grateful Dead haben mir diesen freien Geist eingehaucht, diese Lust auf Tanzen. Ich habe Modern Dance gelernt. Ich hatte eine Nummer in Carnegie Hall. Ich will jetzt nicht auf armes, reiches Mädchen machen oder irgendwie sowas, aber ich komme aus gutem Hause. Und klar sehe ich mich als Mensch, der noch was erreichen will im Leben. Aber dann würde ich alle bei mir aufnehmen wollen, verstehst du? Damit die Leute einfach mal richtig ausschlafen können, verstehst du? Weil ich weiß, wie das ist. Und ich habe seit 3 Jahren nicht mehr in einem richtigen Bett geschlafen. Aber es ist eine Reise im Leben, verstehst du? Das ist wie ein Reporter, der ins Ausland fährt. Wie eine Mission, wie ein Missionar. Und es ist nicht so, dass ich nicht schlafe. Ich habe ein Kissen und eine Decke, verstehst du? Eine Daunendecke sogar. Ich hatte mal einen Schlafsack, den habe ich aber verschenkt. Es tut total gut, anderen was zu schenken. Also schenken. Ich habe so viel über das Schenken gelernt. Schenken gibt einem ein geiles Gefühl. Jemanden einen Kaffee spendieren oder die Maut für jemanden bezahlen oder selbst was geschenkt kriegen, verstehst du? Nett zu anderen zu sein, ist was Unfassbares. So unfassbar nett sein. Total unfassbar. Oft nehmen wir uns einfach nicht die Zeit, andere richtig kennenzulernen. Und vielleicht hat ja jemand ein gebrochenes Herz, weswegen auch immer, verstehst du? Also nochmal zurück zu dieser Frau. Naja, vielleicht hatte sie ein gebrochenes Herz, verstehst du? Und Ich hätte nicht so reagieren sollen, so nach dem Motto, geh mir nicht auf die Nerven. Man weiß es einfach nie. Sei nett zu den anderen. Also nett sein zu anderen. Nett sein.
I don't think anyone is going to forget to be kind. I think this is very clear. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you both. And it's a great example of something I wanted to go more into the structure of the novel, or how you shape the novel and how the plot is shaped, because it's shaped through voices and different points of views. So we're not just following Morayo's trajectory of thoughts, but here we're going into Sage's views. Was it something deliberate, or did that sort of just tumble upon you? So I'm trying to find out about your process a little bit.
Well, my writing process is very messy. Zadie Smith has written an essay in her book, Changing My Mind, I think the collection of essays is called. And she writes about, one of the essays is about different types of writers. She puts writers in two categories when it comes to writing style, the micro planner and the macro planner. So one is the writer that plans everything out and structures it. The other writes their way into the story, and that's a very messy way of writing. But it's what Zadie Smith does, and so I'm in good company. So that's a kind of a writing approach. But I think, when I was writing this book, obviously my main character is Morayo, and I'm interested in her as a character and the way that she sees herself. But I'm also just as interested in the way that others see her. And I think all my life I've been interested in this sort of polarity, if you like, that we may see ourselves in a certain way, but others see us in a different way. And this particularly is an important conversation when you're talking about minorities, and how we see ourselves and how we are perceived. And so it's something that I definitely wanted to do in this book. And also, I'm looking at characters in San Francisco that perhaps other people wouldn't necessarily think of as characters. San Francisco is this city of love, and it's all, wonderful, and people wouldn't necessarily think about it's got many homeless people.
Yes, huge.
And people from all over the world come to this place. So. Yeah, and I think the other thing that I was playing with was there are lots of kind of brief encounters, and for some people this book isn't long enough because people want like much more and it's not satisfying. Of course, you won't find it like that at all. But I was trying to kind of have a mirror of life in a way, that sometimes we can have these rich, wonderful encounters with people, and they last for like the conference, and then we may never see each other again, but that doesn't detract from how rich and how wonderful those encounters actually were. And the last thing I will say is that this is an unusual book because it's a slim book, and there are lots of first person voices, and it's about it's an unusual, an older woman. It's not kind of the story that would necessarily appeal to a European or American market.
Why not?
Because it doesn't fall into kind of the standard trope of what an so-called African story should be like. And so I'm just circling back to my publisher is in the audience, and she gave the speech last night, Bibi, Bakare Yusuf from Cassava Republic. So this is one of the great joys of me having a publisher that not only wants to publish it, but is just like really excited. Like, this is a new, different type of story. The form is also different, and we'll embrace it, and we'll give it such an amazing cover. So amazing that it will inspire publishers around the world to also do these amazing covers. This one has, a little Porsche at the bottom.
Yeah, no. And I agree, and so maybe for those of you who haven't read the book, I mean, I have loads of notes and lots of questions, and one of the things that I jotted down is that what I love about Morayo, you start the opening chapter, we know immediately she's not your stereotypical 74, about to be 75 year old. We know she's flamboyant. Still, she surprised me even on second reading. I read it 2 years ago when it came out, and I read it again now, and I thought, oh. And this time what happened is she swears. And then I read and I thought, but she must not have spelled it out. And I went back, no, the F word was spelled out. So there is something, you set it up really beautifully, and that's why I gave Brian Chikwawa's quote in the beginning, because you play with perceptions all the time. We know she's eccentric in some ways, yet still, I can't put her in a box. I don't know what. She's also very sensual and sexual, and you bring all that in and give her that life, which is obviously a beautiful thing. Coming back to your different points of view, I'm interested really in voices, because both of you gave such a wonderful reading. Do you practice your voices out? How do you differentiate them? Are there characters for you that maybe like an actor would prepare?
Okay, so how many writers in the room are people who talk to themselves, and like you've had an encounter with someone and they've asked you a question or they've said something and you couldn't actually think of the right thing to say at that moment, and you just go home and you just, if I would have said this and I should have said this and I should have. So I think, many writers, I'm one of these writers, write because we find it harder to come up with something on the spur of the moment. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, I've had lots of practice of talking to myself. Mm-hmm. But I think also having, come from a cross-cultural parents, my father's Nigerian, my mother is British, and I've lived in different countries, and I don't speak a lot of languages. I wish I spoke more than I do, but I've heard a lot of languages, and I'm always drawn to voices. Mm. So I'm not often very good at recognizing people, but I can pick out a voice or a laugh. I mean, there's been times when I've heard someone's voice or a laugh like quite a far distance away, and I know it's this person. So
yeah, wonderful. Yeah. I think the time is running away, so let's have the last reading so we're not going to miss out on that. Yeah, do you want to do your third reading? Oh, she's back.
She's back. Okay. All right. So this is from chapter 8. A little bit more serious. I had planned, after retiring from university, to try my hand at writing. Oh, actually, I'm not going to start there because I'll start at a different place, but that's how the chapter begins. One morning, as I stood in my San Francisco kitchen drinking coffee, I opened my newspaper to find on the cover an aerial shot showing bodies in Jos, wrapped in brightly colored Ankara prints. From a distance, they looked almost beautiful, scattered like crayons in a jumbo-sized box, until I read the headline and I peered closer, and I saw that some of the bodies were splattered and many soaked in a deeper red, not belonging to the original fabric. The accompanying text detailed the massacre. People fled in terror, climbing trees to get away. People ought to have been safe in the mango trees behind the thick canopy of green leaves where we used to hide as children. But no, those mad people had chased them even there, before smoking them out, some burning as they fell from the branches. The date was September 11, 2001. I started sending money back home to the orphans, even though I couldn't always be sure whether the money would reach those most affected. It felt better to be doing something rather than nothing. For how was it possible that this had happened in my home city, the place where I had grown up, that I'd once described as the warmest, most generous place on earth, where parents routinely took it upon themselves to look after everyone else's children or discipline them if need be. The place where one always cooked for more than the number of people in one's household, in case others dropped by. The place where old people were never relegated to stuffy barracks to sit for hours waiting for death. The place where vegetable sellers routinely gave their loyal customers a dash of several guavas or a small calabash of tomatoes for the evening stew, something small for free. The place where people said sorry whenever someone tripped or fell or grazed themselves, because that was the linguistic mirror of a culture based on empathy, having nothing to do with who was at fault. The place where Muslims celebrated Christmas and Christians broke the fast during Ramadan with their Muslim brothers and sisters. The place where grown men held hands and grown women walked arm in arm. The place where the term cousin was never used because all cousins were brothers or sisters. The place where Sundays were spent visiting friends and relatives. The place where weddings and funerals and naming ceremonies and baptisms and graduations and independence celebrations and governors' parties were lavish and celebratory. The place where everyone knew your family. The place where the type of atrocities that you read about in history classes concerning the Germans, the Russians, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Nicaraguans, the Boers, and all those foreign people was never supposed to happen to you or to your loved ones, ever, until one day it did, and worse.
Eines Morgens stand ich in meiner Küche in San Francisco, trank Kaffee, schlug meine Zeitung auf und sah auf der Titelseite eine Luftaufnahme von Joes, von Leichen in bunten Akawa-Stoffen. Aus der Ferne wirkten sie fast schön, verstreut wie Malstifte in einer großen Schachtel, bis ich die Schlagzeile las, genauer hinsah und entdeckte, dass einige verstümmelt waren und andere getränkt in ein dunkleres Rot als das der Stoffe. Der Text schilderte das Massaker bis ins kleinste Detail. Ich zweifelte, dass es meine Jocelyn war, aber was denn doch? In diesem Artikel tauchte ihr Name auf. Sie war Zeugin. Sie hatte gesehen, wie die völlig verängstigten Menschen sich auf die Bäume geflüchtet hatten. Eigentlich hätten sie sich sicher sein sollen auf die Mangobäumen, über dem dichten Baldachin aus Laub, wo wir uns früher als Kinder immer versteckt haben. Aber nein. Laut dieser Jocelyn hatten die Wahnsinnigen sie ausgeräuchert. Einige fielen brennend aus den Ästen. Es war der 11. September 2001. Ich fing an, Geld in die Heimat zu schicken, für die Waisenkinder. Auch wenn ich mir nicht immer sicher sein konnte, ob das Geld die am ärgsten Betroffenen überhaupt erreichte. Besser so, als tatenlos zuzusehen, dachte ich. Wie hatte so etwas passieren können, in meiner Heimatstadt? Dem Ort, wo ich aufgewachsen war und den ich als warmherzigsten und großzügigsten Ort der Welt bezeichnet hätte, wo es für Eltern völlig normal war, auf fremde Kinder mit aufzupassen und sie notfalls zur Ordnung zu rufen. Der Ort, wo man immer mehr als nur für den eigenen Haushalt kochte, falls zufällig jemand vorbeikam. Der Ort, wo man alte Leute niemals in stickige Bretterbuden gesteckt hätte, um sie darin auf den Tod warten zu lassen. Der Ort, wo Gemüseverkäufer ihren treuen Kunden einen Dash mit Guaven, einen kleinen Flaschenkürbis mit Tomaten für den Eintopf am Abend oder eine andere Kleinigkeit schenkten. Der Ort, wo die Leute sorry sagten, wenn jemand stolperte oder hinfiel oder sich verletzte. Es war der sprachliche Spiegel einer Kultur, die auf Empathie basierte und nicht darauf, wer schuld war. Der Ort, wo Moslems Weihnachten feierten und Christen im Ramadan mit ihren muslimischen Brüdern und Schwestern zusammen das Fasten brachen. Der Ort, wo erwachsene Männer sich an den Händen hielten und erwachsene Frauen Arm in Arm gingen. Der Ort, wo die Begriffe Cousin und Cousine gar nicht vorkamen, weil alle Brüder und Schwestern waren. Der Ort, wo man sonntags Freunde und Verwandte besuchte. Der Ort, wo Hochzeiten, Beerdigungen, Namenszeremonien, Taufzeremonien, Schulabschlüsse, Unabhängigkeitsfeiern und Gouverneursfeiern opulent und stimmungsvoll begangen wurden. Der Ort, wo alle die Familien kannten, aus der man kam. Der Ort, wo man dachte, die Art von Gräueltaten, die man aus dem Geschichtsunterricht kannte, die fremde Völker wie die Deutschen, die Russen, die Japaner, die Chinesen, die Nicaraguaner und die Buren begangen hatten, niemals einem selbst oder seinen Angehörigen passieren könnte, bis sie eines Tages doch einem selbst passierten.
Thank you. I have so many questions, but I know that we're getting towards the end of our time, so I want to give you a chance to pose a couple of questions before we have to wrap up. And if you don't have any, then
Be kind.
Be kind. No, be amazing. I'm sure some of you must be burning. First, if not, then first of all, we thank them again for this wonderful reading. Sarah Ladipo Manyika and Dela Dabula Manzi. Wonderful. Anyone? Yeah? Start there. And then.
Sarah, I thought...
Oh, there's a roving mic here. If you just...
Both of you did such a beautiful job of bringing the story alive. I just wanted to hear from Sarah, since this is a festival also about translation, what your experience has been to receive your work in German and what other languages the book has been translated into.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it feels like such a privilege and honor to have your work out in just one language, and to have it come out in other languages is so amazing. And I think, I also want to just say, Hansa Berlin, the editor that I work with, she's just amazing. And I knew that there would be a lot of care and thought that went into the translation. And I don't speak German, but I have very close family who are German, and so they have read it and they think it's an excellent translation. And in fact, in one of the readings that I was doing earlier this week with Anna, someone pointed to a slight difference in translation. There's a phrase in at some point, Mariah sometimes is a little challenged when it comes to parking. And she parks a little bit too far from the curb. But she sees these as just minor mistakes. And the way it was translated in German was not as minor mistakes, but as sins. And the way that I understood the translation was something to do with someone of her generation would think of it in that way, rather than as, So I think, my hat goes off to translators, and I thank the translator who is sitting in the back and cannot see us. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name, but just huge thank you for all this, such hard work. And yeah, thank you. Good. So it's just a delight and an honor, and I'm hoping that this book, or maybe my first novel, will come out in African languages soon.
Yes. And thank you so much for asking that, because this is one section I didn't get to, because just to say it's been translated into German, into French, Danish, am I forgetting?
Dutch.
And Dutch, there we go.
It's coming out in Italian.
In Italian.
And Spanish.
And Spanish. It's the book that keeps on giving. There we go. Yeah, so wonderful. There was a question, Susan.
Thank you so much. It's amazing listening to both readers. It sounded different, but the same. It's just such an uplifting experience. Just listening.
It's not on. I don't think it's on.
Maybe it's off. It's on. Maybe I shout a little more.
It's not on.
It's actually really off.
Yeah.
He doesn't like me.
Now it's back.
Okay. Right. Okay. Now let me. It's just. I was saying it's just amazing hearing these voices and so uplifting. And thank you so much, Bibi, for getting this out. She's like, oh, okay, don't talk about me. Okay, I stop right away. I wanted to ask about voices because as a poet, voice is extremely important to what I do. And I sometimes, I notice that in your reading, these voices came out in a very special way. And I could read the way the voices were told me a lot about, for example, Sage's attitude to even black. There was so much unsaid in the way that she said things, and left you who listened to read those unsaid things. So I wanted to ask, do you, I know you have answered already about voice, but I still want to ask about the importance of voice in weaving together this narrative, given that this is prose, although it sounded very poetic to me, but it's still prose. How central is the notion of voice, not simply voice as pure sound, but voice as meaning to what you do?
Well, thank you so much. And you know, I could just listen to you forever, so I just wanted you to keep going. And it's such an honor getting that question and commentary from you, because your poem was so moving, and I think we all just had shivers down our spine as you were reading. So yeah, voice is important for me, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned poetry, because as I was writing this book, I was reading a lot more poetry than I have ever read, and that's just continued. And sort of the nod to that is the title, which is 2 lines from a poem. So the poem is called Donkey On, and it's by an American poet. The lines come from the poem called Donkey On, which is by Mary Ruefle. And the poem is essentially about an older woman. And in the last stanza of the poem, the older woman is given an extra year of life. And the last stanza is, the only question is what to do with it. So I carry it on my back like a mule bringing ice cream to the sun. So I chose sort of a poetic title. You know, storytelling is what makes us human. And I think Yuval Harari, in his *Sapiens* and subsequent books, kind of makes this point as well. And we, you know, all of us at some point, hopefully, or at least when we were young, we had stories read to us. And so the listening of stories is something that we all enjoy. And I think... you know, I grew up in very much a storytelling culture growing up in Nigeria. My father is a pastor, an Anglican minister, And so I grew up hearing his sermons, and I grew up knowing that his best sermons had great stories about his kids. So I kind of write back, and I tell stories about him. So I was very kind of attuned to the, spoken stories. And so for me, this was kind of this second novel was when I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm going to have fun and play and just really try as much as I can to capture the voices. But as you say, also the silences. And I think for me, in part of the reason why this book it's a slim book, but it feels quite dense because I'm trying to say a lot with the words, but also with the silences. And when I had and sort of the master of voice and of silence for me is Toni Morrison. And I asked her, I said, your books are like talking books, like talking drums. I like to kind of think of that as that metaphor. And she said, yes. She said, the sound of a book is very important to me. And for me, that was like a big aha moment. I mean, I already knew that, but to hear her say that and like, yes, I'm going to run with that. That's sort of, it's something that really speaks to me. It's something that I like as much as possible to try and capture.
I think we'll take you. Do we have time for one more? One more and then...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Voices, I love the fact that we keep referring to this word, Stimmen Afrikas, voices from Africa. And Boubacar Boris Diop is sitting here in one of his interviews a few years ago, and he was challenging translators by saying that you cannot translate the voices and the sounds of Dakar into French, to put it that way. You asked her to be kind. Can I also invite you to be kind enough to give us a sneak preview of the voices you're currently working on?
Wonderful final question.
So I write fiction and I write non-fiction. And I have enjoyed writing profile pieces. And as you mentioned, I wrote a profile piece on Toni Morrison, and I wrote a profile piece on Michelle Obama, and so those are two people that people know. But I also wrote a profile piece on my neighbor who will turn 100 next month. Wow. So far I've only written profile pieces on women, but I'm wrapping up something on a profile piece of Pastor Evan Mawarire, who is a political activist, a civil rights activist in Zimbabwe. So hopefully that piece will come out, and that will be his voice. And in terms of what I'm working on in terms of fiction, my first novel, Independence, was historical fiction. This is sort of contemporary, and I'm looking to the future with a third book.
Ooh, suspense. Thank you. Please help me thank Sarah Ladipo Manyika and Dela Dabula Manzi for the German reading.
Thank you very much for these wonderful voices, and for Jutta Himmelreich, who was the interpreter. And then I would kindly invite you to buy the books and enjoy the signatures. We have to change the podium here for Boubacar, and then I would like you to draw the attention also to Olumide Popolo. She's a writer as well, and we will have her on a panel on Saturday noon by 12 in the Stadtbibliothek. So enjoy the evening, and we look forward to have Boubacar Boris Diop in about 15 minutes. Thank you very much.